to all. Welcome to CEC lecture. The topic for discussion is World Environment Day. In this lecture, we shall elaborate on the objectives of observance of World Environment Day. This lecture shall also highlight on important aspects from World Commission on Environment and Development, which was set up in 1983, and it published a very important report, Our Common Future, also known as the Brundtland Report. Further, as we look at the various challenges to environment, we shall also bring attention towards the important role played by India with reference to the need for safer, clean, green environment. Mahatma Gandhi ji said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed." Further, Mahatma Gandhi ji also pointed out, what we are doing to the forests of the world is but a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and one another. Now, these two important ideas from Mahatma Gandhi ji points out towards the important role human beings play with respect to environment, with respect to control of environment, interface with environment. The World Environment Day, observed every year on 5th June, provides an opportunity to broaden the basis for an enlightened opinion and responsible conduct by individuals, enterprises, communities in preserving and enhancing the environment. The World Environment Day is observed every year on 5th June, and then there are various activities in correspondence to the particular theme of the year. These activities are planned around the globe to tackle the important factors responsible for important issues concerning and causing environmental degradation. The United Nations Environment Programme, when we look at how since 5th June 1973, the World Environment Day by United Nations Environment Programme has become the largest global platform for environmental public outreach, and it is celebrated by millions of people across the world. So, this tells us about the significance of the World Environment Day, that it is a very important global platform with reference to deliberations, policy action, activism concerning environmental issues. In the year 1987, the World Commission on Environment and Development, which was set up in 1983, published a report, and the title of the report was Our Common Future. Now, we look at this report with reference to the important issues concerning environment. Now, the document, which also came to be known as the Brundtland Report, after the Commission's chairwoman, Gro Harlem Brundtland. Now, what is the importance of the report, Our Common Future? When we reflect on the importance of the report in the present time, which was published in the year 1987, this report presented an important guiding principle for the idea of sustainable development. Sustainable development, as we all know, is a very significant concept today. This report highlighted how critical global environmental problems were, and primarily it pointed towards an important issue concerning international relations also. International relations has always been seen with reference to military issues, military issues wherein national interest is sacred. But this report pointed out that there is more to global governance dynamics, namely how global environmental problems, they were caused primarily because of the result of enormous poverty of the South and non-sustainable patterns of consumption and production in the North. Further, the significance of the report can be understood from the fact that this report called for a strategy that united development and environment described by the new very important term sustainable development. Let us understand what do we mean by sustainable development, and for that once again we will take reference to the report. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In the year 1989, the report, our Common Future report, was debated in the United Nations General Assembly, which decided to organize United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. And what do we find out? That this report, our Common Future report, presents some very important inputs. And again, the report may have been there in 1987, the UN General Assembly may have been there to debate the report in 1989, but the inputs that the report has presented are of significance for all times. The report pointed out right in the beginning, that is of the chapter, a threatened future. It pointed out, and we quote from the report for a better reading and understanding. The earth is one, but the world is not. We all depend on one biosphere for sustaining our lives, yet each community, each country strives for survival and prosperity with little regard for its impact on others. Further, the report points out, and we quote from the report, reading from the report, failures to manage the environment and to sustain development threaten to overwhelm all countries. So, it points out that how environment is a new security issue where the threat cuts across all the borders. Quoting from the report, environment and development are not separate challenges. They are inexorably linked. So, therefore, it becomes essential that earlier picture, that is, we work out development without any regard for environment, has to be undone. Any policy for development that does not look into concerns of environment is therefore somewhere not pragmatic. Quoting from the report, development cannot subsist upon a deteriorating environmental resource base. The environment cannot be protected when growth leaves out of account the cost of environmental destruction. So, therefore, it is essential that we must take into account that the cost benefit analysis for any development project, policy, outcome must factor in its impact on environment, its impact with reference to conservation of environment or to replenish the depleting resources. Once again, quoting from the Our Common Future report, next important point, environmental stresses and patterns of economic development are linked to one another. Further, that environmental and economic problems are linked to many social and political factors. So, therefore, one gets the sense that how we have to look at environment and look at it in a bigger framework It does not exist in isolation. Economic issues, social issues, political issues, all of it has to be seen. And this is the significance of our Common Future report, that it points out the significance of environment as an important primary factor for global governance. Further, the report points out systemic features operate not merely within but also between nations. Further, the report points out to a very important challenge which has been there for global governance and the world environment, especially when we look at in the post-Cold War era. That is, national boundaries have become so porous that traditional distinctions between matters of local, national and international significance have become blurred. So it becomes essential that how, with the blurring of the borders, the issues concerning local, national and international have also become blurred. So herein what we see, that environment then bore the brunt of the rise of big companies, of the rise of global trade and financial apparatus, where multinationals and transnational companies, global firms were leading the development process. But somewhere in this area of space-time compression, globalization, technological advancements, environment, ecological issues also need to be studied. Further, the report points out that strategy for sustainable development aims to promote harmony amongst human beings and also between humanity and nature. So therefore, it is essential that the report points out that there is a need to understand environment, there is a need to also conserve the environment, but at the same time, it has to be there not through cutting off, not through isolation, not by being in a vacuum, but through idea wherein humanity and nature, harmony between human beings, development and environment can be worked out. And so let's now understand from the inputs given in the report with respect to what is sustainable development, any strategy, any policy with the focus towards sustainable development, what does it require? First, it says a political system that secures effective citizen participation in decision making. Next, it says an economic system that is able to generate surpluses and technical knowledge on a self-reliant and sustained basis. Sustainable development strategies and policies also require a social system that provides for solutions for the tensions arising from disharmonious development. Then it says what does it require? It requires a production system that respects the obligation to preserve the ecological base for development. And lastly, sustainable development strategy requires a technological system that can search continuously for new solutions. Then it also says it needs an international system that fosters sustainable patterns of trade and finance. And lastly, it requires an administrative system that is flexible and has the capacity for self-correction. So therefore, what we see that the World Environment Day, the important day observed every year on 5th June, tries to put forward various issues concerning the environment. And as we understand the relationship between humans and environment, Mahatma Gandhiji rightly, as we pointed out at the beginning of the lecture, that earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed. Seen in this regard, when we try to read through the important inputs presented through the World Commission on Environment and Development WCED, set up in 1983, and their very important report, Our Common Future. Namely, that is looking at new ways to work out this greed and need trade-off, new innovative solutions with respect to develop human interface with environment. So therefore, this report not only highlighted how environmental problems were significant for both national as well as international levels, but also that there is a need to strive for harmony between development and environment, and thereby the idea that sustainable development, that is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now with this comes an important aspect, and that is, this important aspect is today, though sustainable development is an important policy paradigm, it's an important policy perspective, but at the same time one cannot ignore the environmental challenges, namely climate change. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, and that could be through variations in solar cycle, etc. But when we try to understand climate change, the variations, the shifts in temperatures and weather patterns are more, if we go by various research inputs, are more because of human activities. Namely, it is pointed out that since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, the rise of big factory, mass production, amongst others, human activities have been the main drivers of climate change. Burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, gas, cutting down trees, rapid urbanization, massive industrialization, amongst others, have come at a cost of ecological imbalances, and they have now started being reflected in the form of climate change. What could be the causes of climate change? As we just pointed out, that at one place there are natural causes, namely through variations in solar cycles. But the important focus when we look at World Environment Day observation with respect to global governance issues, the theory of anthropogenic climate change, that is, it's the human activities that are causing most of current changes to climate by burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil and natural gas, that has to be taken into account. And again, as our Common Future report points out, that how when we look at anthropogenic impact issues concerning environmental destruction, the issue of north versus south, how few countries, the developed countries, they progressed, and this development happened at the expense of exploitation of natural resources, depletion of precious resources, extracting fossil fuels like coal, oil, natural gas from the underdeveloped, the south countries. Now, today climate change, therefore, when we look in the big picture of global governance, today atmosphere, as we know, is the important aspect of global commons perspective. The atmosphere knows no borders. So therefore, climate change is a global commons problem. It is intricately linked to everything else. Our energy supply, energy debates, clean energy issues are linked to climate change. Land use policy, commercialization, industrialization are linked to the impact of climate change. Food security issues, availability of sufficient water are all related to environment. So, climate change governance therefore requires all national governments, respective states to take an active role with reference to issues concerning climate change and global governance. And every year, the World Environment Day, through various themes, tries to reflect on important environmental challenges. In the year 2018, the theme of World Environment Day was Beat Plastic Pollution. In the year 2019, the theme of World Environment Day was Beat Air Pollution. So what we see here is that how with time then the theme was ecosystem restoration, or the idea of looking at one important planet, our only Earth. So climate change therefore has become an important global governance issue, and World Environment Day through its various themes, various policy actions attempts to factor in that. As we talk about climate change, it becomes very important to look at some positive developments in this regard. And for that, it is essential to reflect on India with respect to issues concerning climate change. And to better understand this aspect of India's action and role with respect to climate change, as you all know, today the world looks upon India as an important power, both from military as well hard power as well as soft power and smart power. So India's role with respect to climate change becomes very important, and India's role then becomes very important with respect to World Environment Day. And we understand this by reading from the national statement by the Indian Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji at COP26 summit in Glasgow. Let's understand. This national statement by the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji pointed out about the initiative of International Solar Alliance, and that is, we have created a coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure for climate adaptation. Further, the national statement pointed out towards a very important aspect, and quoting from there, that is, need for all of us to come together and take lifestyle for environment forward as a campaign. Further, the national statement read, that is, this can become a mass movement of environmental conscious lifestyle. What is needed today, once again quoting from the national statement, that is mindful and deliberate utilization instead of mindless and destructive consumption. The idea that India presented at the Glasgow summit was a very important idea, that is the 5 nectar elements, and that was Panch Amrit to deal with the challenge. And what were they? Let's read it that. First, India will take its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 GW by 2030. Second, India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. Third, India will reduce the total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from now till 2030. Fourth, by 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by more than 45%. And fifth, by the year 2070, India will achieve the target of net zero. These Panch Amrits will be unprecedented contribution of India to climate action. Quoting once again, these inputs were from the national statement by Indian Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi at Glasgow Summit COP26. Now, as we have reflected on World Environment Day themes, the important messages presented from our Common Future report, the important ideas of Panch Amrit presented by India at the Glasgow Summit, it is essential that the efforts to stop the harm to the nature must continue. So therefore, let us stop harming the nature. Let us stop polluting it. Let us join hands to bring a positive change to make planet Earth a much healthier, greener, cleaner, happier place to live. We hope that the lecture on World Environment Day presented to you significant inputs and insights. We look forward to positive, encouraging feedback from you all, and we also look forward to your support to bring a positive change, to make planet Earth a much healthier, greener, cleaner place to live in. Let's join all our hands together. Let's amplify all efforts and support. Let us stop harming the nature. Let us preserve, conserve, save the environment. Thank you very much.